Hi, I'm Leon Lovelace, and this is Unstoppable Force. Now, I need your help, so go to my GoFundMe campaign. I'm put a link in the description below. So I need some financial support so I could grow this channel, so I could do this full-time instead of part-time. Alright, so go down to the link below. But I need to talk about Hurricane Irma, because it's been going on for the last few days. I want to talk about how it hit the Caribbean a couple days ago. And the news hasn't talked about it that much. They've been talking about it, but they've just been talking about how it's going to affect the citizens of the U.S. That's kind of understandable because there's a little more stronger ties to what happens to citizens of the United States, because we could do a little more directly to affect those people versus citizens of a different nation. But, as I like to say, it's not just about the people that live here. It's also about people that live in other nations and in other parts of the world. Caribbean is not too far away from the U.S., but a lot of us don't travel to the Caribbean, so they matter. So let's talk about what's happening, or what happened there a few days ago. Okay, because the strongest Atlantic Ocean hurricane ever measured has slain into the Caribbean islands, causing major damage en route to Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, and Cuba, before hitting the U.S. state of Florida. Because it's a couple days ago. Hurricane Irma caused the death of at least 2 people in the islands of Saint Barthélemy and Saint Martin. Annick Girardin, the French Overseas Territories Minister, said on Wednesday. We're talking about 2 dead and 2 seriously injured for now. Obviously, the situation could change very quickly. Located south of the island of Anguilla, Saint Martin, or Sint Maarten in Dutch, is divided between the France and the Netherlands. Saint Barthélemy, which lies to the southeast of Saint Martin, is administered with the status of a French collectivity, as is the French part of Saint Martin. A national reconstruction plan will be implemented as soon as possible, Macron said after chairing a crisis meeting of France's capital, Paris, adding that an emergency fund to finance it would be set up. The French Weather Office said Irma was a historic hurricane with an unprecedented intensity over the Atlantic. With the islands on maximum alert before the arrival of the strongest storm ever recorded in the Atlantic, France has raised the alarm over the fate of some 7,000 people who refuse to seek shelter. People don't know a phenomenon of this scale in this part of the Caribbean, Girardin said. Hurricane Irma carries the potential for coastal storm surges of up to 6 meters above normal tide levels, the Miami-based National Hurricane Center said on Wednesday. The National Weather Service said Puerto Rico has not seen a hurricane of Irma's magnitude since Hurricane San Felipe in 1928, which killed a total of 2,748 people in Guadalupe, Puerto Rico, and Florida. Warm water is fuel for hurricanes. Irma is over water that's 1 degree Celsius warmer than normal. Alright, so hopefully in the next days we'll also hear about little more stories about the extensive damage that happened in the Caribbean. Because I'm sure there's a lot, but I haven't really seen that much, so I'll dig to see. Hopefully it wasn't a ton of people that got killed. I think it was around like 15 to 20, the last thing I saw. But I'll still try to look and see more of what happened. But let's go on to Florida and see what happened to Florida, because Hurricane Irma was downgraded to a tropical storm this morning as it continues to batter Florida. Winds, torrential rain, and dangerous storm surges. The storm has killed at least 5 and left nearly 6 million without power in the state. Irma is headed toward Tallahassee and expected to move tonight into Georgia and Alabama with heavy rain and winds. Tornado watch has also been issued in Florida from Daytona Beach to Jacksonville and into Georgia through Savannah. The storm has dumped massive amounts of rain in Brunswick, Georgia, as well as the Florida cities of Daytona Beach, Orlando, Melbourne, and Gainesville, causing flash flooding in several of those areas. A record storm surge was reported this morning in Jacksonville, exceeding the previous record set by Hurricane Dora in 1964. Flash flood warning is in effect for Jacksonville this morning, as water is expected to flow to the city from St. Johns River. And this report that's talking about Florida is from earlier today, as I'm shooting this video. So I'm going to also post a video about MSNBC reporter. He's a gentleman that works for Al-Jazeera, and he goes on MSNBC. And he talks the truth about how the oil companies, or how people started drilling in Texas, and they started booming with oil because that's where a lot of the oil was found in the U.S. And there's reports about how it was causing environmental problems back in the 70s. And of course, the oil corporations covered it up so they could keep on making money, keep on drilling, so they could keep getting crude oil out the earth. And it's just great how I'm gonna show it here, but it's just great seeing talk truth to power and just letting the people know a little bit of the background of why the Hurricane Harvey was so devastating.
Shot. Shihab, what's the situation as you've seen it?
We're surrounded, as you said, as so many people are in Beaumont. We can take a look. I mean, we're in an island of calm, an oasis of dryness relative, but already this water is beginning to come up over here. This is I-10 behind us. Sections of this are now closed. Down there is Louisiana. We know sections. Jeff, you want to go this way? Down there is Louisiana. That's the road we took to get here. The whole section moving to Louisiana is now shut, we understand. It's interesting listening to the mayor, though, just then, because we were listening to the mayor as well last night. If you were a resident in Beaumont last night and you are watching local television, you would have been reassured by what the mayor said, by what the weather forecaster said. This wasn't going to be as bad as this. I remember the mayor talking about all the investment they've done in drainage for roads and things like that. It's pretty clear something has gone wrong here with the forecasting and with the preparation. Clearly the roads are now waterlogged. We understand 500 roads just in the southeast region are flooded. Actually, let me put this in context. I know you were talking to someone in Port Arthur a moment ago. We're in what's called the Golden Triangle in the southeast. So we have Orange is one point of that triangle to the north. We're in Beaumont, and then we have Port Arthur to the south. Now, you know, it's interesting. The reason why it's called the Golden Triangle is because this is the first place in the United States where they discovered large quantities of oil in 1901. Right. And that led to the Texas oil boom and the huge amounts of money pouring into this region. It's pretty clear, though, that despite that, money has not been flowing into this region for the infrastructure, for the climate change effects that we knew were inevitable because of the oil and gas industry's activities on this coastline, even as those oil and gas industries were covering up what they knew about climate change in the 70s. I have to go on about this. Ali, you're an Al Jazeera guy. We get to the point on Al Jazeera. Yep. So that is very striking for us here. So much money has been made on this region, and it just hasn't gone into the infrastructure to deal with the climate change that was inevitable because of the industry.
Hold that thought for 1 second, because on the screen we've got a live helicopter rescue. I believe I'm going to ask my control room. This is in Beaumont. Miguel Almaguer, I believe, is on that helicopter. They have lowered the basket to get somebody from the water. This is a Navy helicopter, and it is rescuing someone now. Somebody on the ground is placing someone into the basket, and now we are seeing the basket rise up to the helicopter where that person will be pulled inside. Watch that now. You just saw moments ago 2 other people rescued by this helicopter. We're sitting inside the helicopter. Here we go. The basket coming up to the edge of the cabin on the helicopter. People from inside are now pulling it up, and we have somebody in there. We're just going to try and get a better shot of it. Obviously, this is not in our hands. This is a moving helicopter with a rescue taking place. We are looking at a gentleman who's got his belongings in his hand, who has been put inside the helicopter now. A safe rescue above Beaumont. But boy, what a thing. Shihab Ratansi is still with me. He's in Beaumont on the ground, where not too far from where this took place. And Shihab, this is a major point. You are not only in the heart of oil country, you are where right around where the strategic petroleum reserves are. There are refineries there, chemical plants. There's been a lot of this kind of discussion, and yet this is what we're seeing. We're seeing roads that are completely covered, people trapped in their apartments and their dwellings.
You can't make the connection between the oil and gas industry and climate change much much clearer. And you know, you were talking to someone in Port Arthur. We understand the largest crude oil refinery in the United States in Port Arthur is shutting down. That might sound very prudent, but what we know from experiences when you shut down these refineries, there's a huge amount of toxic gas that's released. So we've got to watch out for all that. And in the past, oil and gas companies have just got away with covertly just like losing a lot of toxic waste in emergencies like this. But this is, I mean, it's not rocket science. I mean, this has been warned about for years by climate scientists. ProPublica had a piece just last year warning of that something like this was bound to happen in the Houston area at the very least. And yet this is all coming as a surprise, and there just aren't the preparations for it. And yet so much money has been generated here. The mayor yesterday talking about how she spent $5 million on roadways for drainage. Well, it wasn't enough. And yet there is more money here, and Texas politicians clearly have a lot to answer for because they're the ones.
I think we may have just lost Shihab's line there. We're looking at another.
And the situation is a little bit different in Florida, but I'm sure one thing they could talk about that when it comes to actually talking about the storms is how we keep continuing to use gasoline and not transitioning enough into using solar power for transportation and using wind power to power our homes and our cars, and switching to electric vehicles or at least hybrid vehicles so we can use less crude oil and burning less crude oil day in and day out. Because some people talk about how, if you just buy an older car, then you're not using natural resources to kind of waste, because you don't really need to buy a new car and use all these natural resources to have something brand new built. But we're way past that. We need to start burning less fuel on a day-to-day basis, or even just switch an electric vehicle. If you live in a city or you just live right out in the city and you don't drive that many miles per day for most of the year. So we really need to start switching electric vehicles, and it's just disappointing to see that they're not talking about how, because of the excessive crude oil and excessive fossil fuels we're using, that's also putting people in Florida a high risk of flooding, not just from hurricanes like Irma, but just normal rainfall, because just the sea levels are rising and just all the other environmental factors that are going on, like maybe just excessive rainfall that happens in low-lying areas. Those sorts of things that are just creating massive amounts of problems in our environment.